The transport shuttle's engines hummed their final notes as Jake Martinez stepped onto the gleaming deck of the Galactic Defense Station Nexus 7. His worn combat boots squeaked against the pristine metallic floor, announcing his arrival like a battle cry in a library. The rookie human pilot clutched his deployment orders with sweaty palms, grinning like a fool who just won the cosmic lottery. "Welcome to the big leagues, meatbag," he whispered to himself, chuckling at his own joke. Station Nexus 7 was a marvel of alien engineering. Towering crystalline spires stretched toward artificial suns, while holographic displays painted the walls with tactical information in 17 different languages. The air tasted of ozone and recycled dreams, thick with the scent of 1,000 different species breathing the same filtered atmosphere. Jake had dreamed of this moment since he was 12 years old, watching grainy footage of humanity's first contact with the Galactic Coalition. Now, at 23, he was the youngest human pilot ever assigned to a multi-species defense station. His superiors back on Earth had called him promising. His fellow cadets had called him lucky. His ex-girlfriend had called him completely insane. She might have been right about that last part. The orientation hall buzzed with activity as Jake joined the crowd of new recruits. Species he'd only seen in textbooks mingled around him. The serpentine vorths slithered between conversations, their scales catching the artificial light like liquid metal. The insectoid klaxons clicked and chirped in their rapid-fire language, antennae twitching with nervous energy. Even the peaceful Eldori, those blue-skinned philosophers of the Outer Rim, had sent representatives to this military posting. But it was a group in the corner that made Jake's stomach clench with anticipation. The Zephyrians. 7 feet of pure muscle and attitude, covered in midnight black exoskeletons that looked like they could stop a plasma cannon. Their 4 arms moved with predatory grace, each one capable of crushing steel pipes like paper tubes. Most intimidating of all were their faces, elongated skulls with burning amber eyes that seemed to see straight through flesh and bone to catalog your deepest fears. They were the Coalition's elite shock troops, veterans of the brutal Rim Wars that had raged for 30 years. Every human pilot grew up hearing stories about Zephyrian combat prowess, their legendary discipline, and their complete lack of humor about anything remotely related to warfare. Jake straightened his shoulders and walked toward them anyway. "Mind if I join your little circle of sunshine?" he asked, flashing his trademark grin. The largest Zephyrian, whose name tag read Commander Thornscale, turned those burning eyes toward the human rookie. The alien's mandibles clicked together in what Jake's training manual described as mild annoyance, but which sounded more like a predator preparing to feed. "Human," Commander Thornscale rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "You are assigned to transport duty, supply runs to mining colonies, perhaps delivering spare parts to maintenance crews, if you prove competent enough not to crash into asteroids." The other Zephyrians made a sound that might have been laughter, if laughter could strip pain from walls. Jake's grin widened. "Transport duty? That's cute. See, I think there's been some kind of mix-up. I'm Jake Martinez, ace pilot, top of my class at Luna Academy, holder of 14 simulation records. I'm not here to deliver spare parts. Commander, I'm here to fly combat missions." Commander Thornscale's massive frame seemed to expand as he stepped closer. His 4 arms crossed in a gesture that transcended species barriers, universal body language for "you've got to be kidding me." "Little human," the commander said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a battle roar. "You have been in space for exactly 4 standard days. You have never fired a weapon in anger. You have never watched your wingman burn alive in a vacuum while enemy fighters tear his ship apart piece by piece. You have never had to make the choice between saving civilians or completing your mission." The commander leaned down until his skull was inches from Jake's face. The rookie could smell something like burning metal and old blood on the alien's breath. "I have done all of these things and more across 30 years of warfare. I have seen species extinct themselves rather than surrender. I have watched planets burn until their atmospheres turned to poison. I have killed more enemies than your entire species has produced pilots." The orientation hall had gone quiet around them. Jake could feel hundreds of eyes from dozens of species watching the confrontation unfold. Commander Thornscale's mandibles spread wider, revealing rows of teeth like obsidian daggers. So when I tell you that you'll be flying transport duty, human rookie, it is not because of some administrative error. It is because you are not ready to die beside warriors. You are not ready to make the hard choices that keep the Coalition alive. You are barely ready to exist in the same universe as real combat. The commander straightened to his full height, looking down at Jake like a mountain regarding an ant. Perhaps in 5 years, if you survive that long without flying into a star, we might allow you to observe actual pilots from a safe distance. But combat duty? Fighting alongside Zephyrian elite forces. The alien's laugh was like grinding glass. You would last exactly 17 seconds in real battle. I have calculated this based on your psychological profile and combat simulations. 17 seconds, human. Then you would be nothing but expanding plasma and regret. The silence stretched like a hell breath. Other recruits shifted uncomfortably, waiting to see how the human would react to such a brutal assessment. Jake Martinez looked up at the towering alien warrior, at those burning eyes and razor teeth, at the scars that crisscrossed Commander's exoskeleton like a road map of violence. He took in the weight of 30 years' experience, the authority of countless battles won and lost, the absolute certainty in that grinding voice. Then Jake smiled even wider. "You know what, Commander?" he said, his voice carrying that distinctive human quality that every alien species had learned to recognize. The sound of someone about to do something spectacularly stupid. "I bet you're absolutely right about those 17 seconds. Commander Thornscale's mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion. "But here's the thing," Jake continued, that grin never wavering. "You're thinking like a Zephyrian, all tactics and discipline, and following the rules of engagement. Very impressive, very professional. But you've never fought alongside humans in actual combat, have you? You've read our files, studied our simulations, maybe watched some training footage." The rookie pilot began to circle the massive alien, hands clasped behind his back, like a professor delivering a lecture. "See, what you don't understand about humans, Commander, is that we don't really do the whole rational fear of death thing the way most species do. Oh, we understand mortality just fine. We know we're fragile little meat bags floating around in the cold vacuum of space. But instead of letting that knowledge make us careful," Jake stopped directly in front of the Zephyrian commander and shrugged. "We decided to get creative with it." Commander Thornscale's amber eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you suggesting, human?" "I'm suggesting that your 17-second calculation might be a little off," Jake replied. "Not because I'm some super pilot who's going to dance through enemy fire like a ballet dancer on combat stims. You're probably right about my skill level. I probably would die in 17 seconds if I fought like a Zephyrian." The rookie's grin took on an edge that made several nearby aliens step backward. "But I wouldn't fight like a Zephyrian, would I? I'd fight like a human. And humans? We cheat." The commander's mandibles spread slightly. "Cheat? Oh, absolutely. See, while you spent 30 years learning proper tactics and following rules of engagement and developing all that impressive discipline, humans have spent 30,000 years figuring out how to kill things that are bigger, stronger, and better armed than we are. It's kind of our specialty." Jake's voice took on a conversational tone, as if he were discussing the weather rather than interspecies warfare. "You want to know what I'd do in those 17 seconds, Commander? I wouldn't try to outfly enemy fighters or outgun their weapon systems. That would be stupid. Instead, I'd ram my ship straight into their command vessel at maximum velocity while detonating every weapon I had on board. Take out their entire command structure in one completely insane suicide run." The silence in the orientation hall had become absolute. "Of course, I'd eject at the last second," Jake added cheerfully. "Assuming I'd rig my fighter with a remote detonator and program the navigation system to maintain course after I bailed out, which I definitely would have because, like I said, humans cheat." Commander Thornscale stared at the rookie pilot for long seconds. The alien's four arms had uncrossed and now hung at his sides, hands opening and closing reflexively. "That," the commander said slowly, "would be completely contrary to all established military doctrine. Yep, it would violate numerous rules of engagement. Probably." It would be tactically unsound, strategically questionable, and operationally insane. Jake's grin reached maximum brightness. Now you're getting it. Commander Thornscale leaned back, those amber eyes studying the human with new interest. Your superiors would court-martial you for such reckless endangerment of Coalition assets. Only if I survived long enough for them to catch me, Jake replied. Which, let's be honest, probably wouldn't happen very often. Humans don't really have great life expectancy rates in combat situations, but we do tend to take a lot of enemies with us on the way out. The commander was quiet for nearly a full minute, processing this information. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its grinding menace. You are saying that human combat doctrine is essentially organized suicide. Oh, no, Commander. Suicide implies we're trying to die. We're definitely trying to win. We're just willing to die in increasingly creative ways if that's what winning requires. There's a subtle but important difference. Jake clasped his hands behind his back again, rocking slightly on his heels. See, most species develop combat tactics based on the assumption that their soldiers want to survive the battle. Perfectly reasonable assumption. Survival is generally considered a good thing. But humans, we develop tactics based on the assumption that sometimes survival is less important than making sure the other guy doesn't survive either. Commander Thornscale's mandibles clicked rapidly. This explains much about your species' reputation. What reputation is that? That humans are either completely insane or too stupid to understand how dangerous the universe is. Jake laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both cheerful and slightly unsettling. Why not both? The commander studied the rookie pilot for another long moment. Then, to Jake's surprise, the alien's mandibles spread in what the training manual described as grudging respect. Human Martinez, Commander Thornscale said formally, I believe I may have miscalculated your combat effectiveness. Yeah? What's the new estimate? 23 seconds. Possibly 24 if you remember to prime your weapons before impact. Jake nodded sagely. That's much more reasonable. Though I should probably mention that 24 seconds is plenty of time for me to do something really stupid. Such as... The human's grin became positively predatory. Well, that would spoil the surprise, wouldn't it? The test flight. 3 days later, Jake found himself strapped into the cockpit of a Coalition fighter, his hands dancing across controls that still felt alien despite hours of simulator training. The sleek vessel hummed around him like a living thing, its neural interface tickling the edges of his consciousness with targeting data and flight trajectories. Transport duty, my left boot, he muttered, running through his pre-flight checklist with practice efficiency. The emergency klaxons had been wailing for the past 20 minutes. A Ravager raiding party had hit the outer mining colony of Kepler-7, and every available pilot was being scrambled for rescue operations. Even the rookies. Even the humans assigned to spare parts delivery. Rookie Martinez. Commander Thornscale's voice crackled through the comm system. You will maintain formation at the rear of the squadron. Your job is to observe and learn. Do not engage hostiles under any circumstances. Do not deviate from assigned flight path. Do not do anything remotely creative or stupid. Copy that, Commander, Jake replied cheerfully. Maintain formation. Observe, learn. No creativity, no stupidity. Got it. I am serious, human. The Ravagers are not training dummies. They are apex predators who have spent millennia perfecting the art of killing anything that moves. This is not a simulation where you can reset if you make mistakes. Understood, sir. I'll be good. There was a pause in the transmission. Why do I not believe you? Probably because you've been reading my psychological profile again, Jake admitted. My instructors back on Earth always said I had trust issues. Specifically, that people had trouble trusting me not to do exactly what they told me not to do. Commander Thornscale, so I carried clearly through the comm squadron. Launch in 30 seconds. Rookie Martinez, remember what we discussed about your life expectancy. 24 seconds, sir. Possibly 25, if I remember to duck. The launch bay doors opened like the mouth of some mechanical god, revealing the star-filled void beyond. Jake felt his heart rate spike as the electromagnetic catapult grabbed his fighter, and hurled it into space with enough force to turn unprotected humans into paste. He whooped with joy as the acceleration pressed him back into his seat. The squadron formed up around Commander Thornscale's massive command fighter, 12 veteran pilots in ships that looked like mechanical angels of death. Jake's smaller human-built vessel took its assigned position at the back, feeling like a minnow swimming with sharks. Kepler 7 colony in sight, reported Lieutenant Crix, a Vorth pilot whose serpentine voice made tactical updates sound like poetry. I'm reading multiple Ravager vessels in attack formation. Estimates show 15 enemy fighters and 2 heavy cruisers. Jake whistled softly. 15 to 12 odds weren't terrible, but Ravager technology was notoriously superior to standard Coalition equipment. Their ships were faster, their weapons hit harder, and their pilots were bred from birth for combat. This was going to be a real fight. Squadron, engage at will, Commander Thornscale ordered. Priority targets are the heavy cruisers. Do not let them reach the colony's main habitat domes. Rookie Martinez, maintain position and try not to die. Copy that, sir. Maintaining position, trying not to die. The battle began like a deadly ballet. Coalition fighters streaked toward the enemy formation, while Ravager vessels rose to meet them, their black ships moving like liquid shadow against the stars. Weapons fire painted the void in brilliant colors, plasma bolts and energy beams creating a light show that would have been beautiful if it weren't so lethal. Jake watched from his assigned position, hands gripping his controls as every instinct screamed at him to join the fight. A Zephyrian pilot spun past his cockpit, her ship trailing atmosphere from a hull breach. 2 Coalition fighters ganged up on a Ravager interceptor, their combined fire tearing through enemy shields in a cascade of sparks. Then he saw the problem. One of the Ravager heavy cruisers had broken through the main battle line and was making a straight run toward Kepler 7. Its massive bulk bristled with weapons designed to crack planetary defenses, and the colony's shields were already failing under concentrated bombardment. "Commander, we got a runner," Jake called over the comm. "Heavy cruiser, bearing 27 Mark IV, heading straight for the colony." "I see it," Thornscale replied, his voice tight with concentration. "Squadron 7 and 9, break off and intercept." But Squadron 7 was pinned down by enemy fighters, and Squadron 9 was too far out of position. The Ravager cruiser would reach the colony in less than 3 minutes, and there wasn't enough time to organize a proper intercept. Jake watched the tactical display with growing horror. The cruiser's main guns were already charging for a bombardment run that would kill 30,000 civilians. Standard Coalition doctrine called for a coordinated attack by at least 6 fighters to have any hope of penetrating the vessel's defenses. Jake looked at his own fighter's weapon systems. He had 2 light plasma cannons and a single torpedo. Against a heavy cruiser, it would be like attacking a battleship with a slingshot. "Rookie Martinez," Commander Thornscale's voice cut through the chatter. "Do not even think about it." "Think about what, sir?" "Whatever insane plan is currently forming in that chaotic human brain of yours." The answer is no. Jake grinned and switched his comm to a private channel. "With all due respect, Commander, I don't think I asked for permission." He slammed the throttle forward and peeled away from the squadron, his fighter screaming toward the enemy cruiser at maximum velocity. Behind him, he could hear Commander Thornscale roaring orders that he cheerfully ignored. The Ravager cruiser's point defense systems came online as Jake approached, filling space around him with deadly accurate fire. His fighter bucked and rolled as near misses Scorch's hull plating, but he kept his course steady, diving straight toward the massive vessel's engine section. "Martinez, you magnificent idiot, what are you doing?" Lieutenant Crix's voice crackled through the comm. "Something stupid," Jake replied, arming his single torpedo, "which means it might actually work." The cruiser's main gun swiveled toward him, massive weapons that could vaporize his entire fighter with a single shot. Jake watched the targeting computers calculate firing solutions, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. This was the moment. This was where his 24 seconds started counting down. Instead of trying to evade the incoming fire, Jake did something that violated every rule of space combat he'd ever learned. He aimed his fighter directly at the cruiser's main gun barrel and fired his torpedo, not at the ship's hull, but into the weapon itself. The torpedo disappeared into the gun barrel, just as the Ravager weapon fired. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the cruiser's entire forward section erupted in a chain reaction of explosions as the torpedo detonated inside the weapon's firing chamber, sending feedback to the ship's power grid and turning its own guns against itself. Jake pulled his fighter into a screaming turn as debris from the crippled cruiser filled the space where he'd been flying moments before. The massive vessel spun helplessly, its engines dead, its weapons offline, no longer a threat to anyone except possibly nearby asteroids. Did he just? Lieutenant Crix's voice trailed off in amazement. He shot a torpedo down the barrel of their main gun, Commander Thornscale said, and Jake could hear something like stunned respect in the alien's voice. While they were firing it. Is that even possible? Asked another pilot. Apparently, the commander replied, though I suspect it shouldn't be. Jake keyed his comm with shaking hands, the adrenaline making his voice higher than he would have liked. Rookie Martinez, the squadron leader. Enemy heavy cruiser is neutralized, returning to formation. Rookie Martinez. Commander Thornscale's voice was very, very quiet. Report to my office immediately upon return to base. Am I in trouble, sir? There was a long pause. I honestly have no idea. 2 hours later, Jake stood at attention in Commander Thornscale's office, trying not to fidget under the alien's burning gaze. The Zephyrian commander sat behind his desk like a mountain of controlled violence, for hands steepled in front of him, mandibles clicking in what Jake hoped was thoughtful consideration rather than homicidal rage. Explain, the commander said finally. Explain what, sir? Explain how a rookie pilot with 4 days of space experience managed to single-handedly neutralize a Ravager heavy cruiser, using a tactic that should have resulted in his immediate death. Jake shifted uncomfortably. Well, sir, technically it was more like 5 days of space experience, if you count the transport flight from Earth. Commander Thornscale's amber eyes narrowed. Martinez. Right, yes, sir. Explaining. Jake took a deep breath. See, the thing is, I wasn't really trying to neutralize the cruiser. I was just trying to buy time for the real pilots to organize a proper attack. By shooting a torpedo into their main gun. Yes, sir. I figured it would probably just jam the weapon, maybe cause some minor damage, give the colony a few extra minutes to evacuate. I had no idea it would cause a feedback loop that would cripple their entire power grid. The commander leaned forward. You had no idea. None whatsoever, sir. I was making it up as I went along, which, according to my instructors back home, is pretty much standard operating procedure for humans in combat situations. So this was not a calculated tactical maneuver based on superior knowledge of Ravager ship design. Oh no, sir. This was me doing something stupid and getting lucky. Very, very lucky. Commander Thornscale sat back in his chair, mandibles clicking rapidly. Do you understand how disturbing that is, Martinez? How do you mean, sir? I mean that in 30 years of warfare, I have never seen anything like what you did today. Not because it was particularly skillful or clever, but because it was so completely, utterly random that no sane tactical computer could have predicted it. The commander stood and began pacing around his desk, all 4 arms gesturing expressively. Ravager ship designers spend decades perfecting their vessels. They account for every possible attack vector, every known weapon system, every documented tactic in the Coalition database. But they cannot account for a rookie pilot who decides to fire a torpedo into a gun barrel for no better reason than it seemed like a good idea at the time. Jake nodded slowly. So you're saying I'm unpredictable. I am saying you are a statistical impossibility that somehow learned to fly a starfighter. Commander Thornscale stopped pacing and fixed Jake with that burning stare. Which makes you either the most dangerous pilot in the Coalition fleet or the most dangerous hazard to your own squadron. Possibly both. And which one do you think I am, sir? The commander was quiet for a long moment. Then his mandibles spread in what Jake had learned to recognize as a Zephyrian smile. I think, Pilot Martinez, that we are about to find out. Commander Thornscale moved around his desk until he was standing directly in front of the human rookie. His massive frame towered over Jake, casting the smaller pilot in shadow. You disobeyed direct orders today. Yes, sir. You endangered Coalition assets with reckless and unauthorized actions. Yes, sir. You violated approximately 17 different military regulations. Probably more than that, sir. The commander leaned down until his skull was inches from Jake's face, just as he had during their first meeting 3 days ago. But this time, something was different. This time, there was no menace in those amber eyes. Instead, there was something that looked almost like respect. And you saved 30,000 civilian lives while neutralizing a superior enemy vessel using a tactic so insane that it will probably be studied in military academies for the next century. Jake grinned. So, am I still on transport duty, sir? Commander Thornscale's mandibles spread wider, revealing those razor-sharp teeth. But instead of looking threatening, the expression somehow managed to look almost fond. Pilot Martinez, the commander said formally, you are hereby reassigned to active combat duty with the 1st Assault Squadron. You will fly wing position with me personally so that I can keep an eye on whatever completely insane thing you decide to do next. Really, sir? Really. Though I should warn you, the 1st Assault Squadron has a motto that I think you should know about. What's that, sir? Commander Thornscale straightened to his full height, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 30 years of warfare and the promise of battles yet to come. Death before dishonor. Victory through chaos. And always remember that the enemy's best-laid plans are no match for one human with a really stupid idea. Jake's grin reached maximum brightness. Sir, I think I'm going to like it here. Oh, I'm sure you will, Pilot Martinez. I'm sure you will. As Jake left the commander's office, he could hear the alien's laughter following him down the corridor. It was a sound like grinding stone and breaking metal, but somehow it was also the sound of acceptance. He was no longer the rookie who'd been assigned to transport duty. He was no longer the human who'd been given 17 seconds to live in combat. He was Pilot Jake Martinez of the 1st Assault Squadron, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the enemies of the Coalition were about to learn what that meant. They were going to hate it,